Hi, this is again Koji from Celestial Rhythms, and this video is about the annular solar eclipse of June 21st as it affects the American nation, focused on Washington, the capital of the sole superpower on this planet right now, and where all the big changes are really taking shape, from where then the whole planet will be following suit into a new dimension, a new era. So these coming 6 months, and that's the prime impact of a solar eclipse, lasts for 6 months till the next solar eclipse appears, kind of the next spoke of the wheel of creation. And as I said in my earlier presentation on the global impact of this eclipse, I'll put the link below. You will see that eclipses come in families. There's at any time about 40 different families of eclipses active, and each family of eclipses lasts for about 13 centuries, producing 70 around solar eclipses and about the same amount of lunar eclipses. And each eclipse family has a theme. So to understand the theme of an eclipse, we look at the base chart, and this is the heliocentric chart for Saros series 137 for May 25, 1389. That's when, for the first time, the sun and the moon were exactly in line, so the shadow fell on Earth, creating that first impact of a 13th century series of eclipses wandering from the South Pole to the North Pole like a spiraling motion every 18 years, creating a new eclipse. So we are now here pretty much at the center of this 1300 century episode, if you want, and at the center of around the in the center, whatever few centuries, there are perfect alignments of sun and moon. It was a most perfect alignment which we had just 2 days ago. The only reason there was not a total eclipse of the sun, was because the moon was too far away from Earth to be big enough to cover the whole solar disk. So that's why there was still a ring of fire at all times visible around the sun. Now this doesn't reduce the power of an eclipse, it's the imbalance of light which is really the issue here, which creates almost a scar, an impact where new energy seeps in. So here we look at the base chart, and what is particular about this chart is on that day when this eclipse series was generated, we had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. You see, within 2 minutes of arc, so that was just hours prior, or maybe a day prior, when that was exact, in early Scorpio. Now Uranus and Jupiter together, that's an energy of inquiry, of exploring, of going into a new direction. For example, in 1969, when we officially first went to the moon, that was a year when Uranus and Jupiter had a conjunction. So it's always that spark of the new, of something unusual, exciting, which is associated with Jupiter and Uranus. And in Scorpio, that means going into the depth At the same time, when that eclipse was exact, there was a Mercury Neptune opposition squared by Sedna and Pallas here on the other end, making a grand square. Now this is interesting. Mercury Neptune is that realm of what is true, what is fiction. Sedna is the unknown, the depth, the far away, the mystery, but also the dark shadows are represented by Sedna of the underworld. So this T-square tells us that there is something to be resolved here during the times when that eclipse family is put into the limelight, which happens, as I say, every 18 years when a new solar eclipse of that series manifests. So we are now going and looking at the chart for Washington DC of the eclipse just 2 days ago of June 21st, and again I'm showing you the heliocentric picture first. Means how the planets were aligned from the sun's perspective, which is the purely energetic picture, what is encoded in the sun's energy, which then travels to the sun and which feeds life, which we breathe, which we take into our system, which has that energy encoded in it, which feeds life, which makes us sustain. So what is really standing out again here is Uranus exactly at the rising point, at the ascendant, the sunrise point for Washington DC. I mentioned Uranus several times in the last few podcasts. Uranus has on a regular basis been standing out very powerfully placed. Uranus, the planet of surprise, change, shock, the unusual, the new. Uranus in Taurus since 2011, since 2018, I want to say, till about 2025. So Uranus in Taurus is kind of reseeding Earth with new ideas and all that Uranian energy, which is really, in a way, very airy, as Uranus is understood to be ruling Aquarius. It's Aquarian energy. And the sign Taurus is the sign of gardening, of bringing things down, of planting these new ideas, giving them form, shape. It's interesting that Tesla has Uranus in Taurus together with Pluto. He's a very beautiful example for that, bringing these higher energies down into the manifest. So that is the overall understanding I have of Uranus in Taurus for these 7 years between 18 and 25, of bringing all that wonderful theory of free energy, of technologies, making it manifest, giving it birth. So this is a great sign for that, but also it's in general showing that there will be surprise, the unusual, and we will we might get shocked by what is developing, at least those people who have not been properly informed. Furthermore, what stands out in this heliocentric chart is Jupiter exactly in midheaven 1 degree off 2023 versus midheaven at 2128. And it's this big stellium. I have been talking about that several times already, because these are all slower moving points. This has been in place since months. Just Pallas and Venus are faster, and naturally Mars. So Venus is just entering this stellium, Pallas is entering this stellium here by heliocentric perspective. Then we have here Arrokoth and Chariklo. Arrokoth, I just want to point out once more, is that newly found small orbiter, which is the farthest away from our planet. We have very close understanding of its geology. It was on January 1st, 2019, when the New Horizons spacecraft had its close flyby, and in the wake of that, scientists found that history of our whole solar system, the whole idea they had of its evolution, has to be rewritten. So this little body had a huge impact already. It was named last November after a Native American name of the sky, standing under the sky, a man standing under the open sky, looking at the whole picture, seeing the whole firmament, understanding the complexity of unification, seeing everything at once. So Arrokoth here, very high up. Arrokoth had just a heliocentric conjunction with Jupiter. Actually, it was exact on May 26, which was around the time when that Floyd event happened. I guess that was on the 25th, and then in the wake of that, and there were, it was kind of opening our eyes to a new level of deception, I would say, which is just starting to really expose itself on all levels. So Arrokoth is the energy which makes us think twice, understand that maybe things have not been the way we were told. And now what we do next is looking at the midpoint of these two charts, the base chart of 1389, the one 2 days ago, June 21st, 2020, which is the hinge between these two energies. Relationship charts are very powerful. They show how evolution interacts. It's always an interaction. Everything in this universe is relationship. So here you see the midpoint, and what stands out again is Uranus here in the first degree of Leo, conjunct Ceres, the earth goddess. And this again, as I say, is heliocentric. What further is powerful, we have a Earth-Jupiter conjunction here, expansive, going to the new direction. The Gemini energy here is, it's interesting that where also the North Node is right now, and that's the direction we move into collectively in that sense. So that Jupiter up here shows also the diversity and all the many possibilities which are opening themselves up to us. It's kind of overwhelming. Jupiter in Gemini can be very overwhelming. Too many paths to choose, too many ways to go. So it will be really also a time of just absorbing it all at first, what is coming our way. What is further interesting here is the trine from Jupiter to Venus, which is that balancing of beauty and expansion into the new. It has that aspect that we are enticed, we are excited. So many of these things might still be a little bit obscured. It will take a little while for all that coming to the full light. As I said in my earlier podcast, it's mainly Mars, which is about to change into Aries. Now let's go to the geocentric pictures here to show you how this is manifesting here down on Earth. So I just draw the charts here quickly into the geocentric pictures, and let's just quickly go back to the base chart of 1389. Now this is how we experience it on Earth, and you see that eclipse which started the series at 12 degrees Gemini. That's the American nation's descendant. I mentioned that before too. So that shows that really this whole series has a strong impact on the relationships between people in the United States, as is the 7th house cusp. What further is really interesting is the ascendant here at 9 degrees Virgo, and the descendant at 9 degrees Pisces, and I show you why. Let's just go back to the American chart here for a second, and this is the heliocentric one. Let's just go back to the geocentric. I don't want to overload you with too much information, but this is important. So Nessus, that's the bad boy. That's the centaur, which has to do with all the dark stuff, abuse, and you name it, pathological behavior, ugly, repulsive. So this is at 9 degrees Pisces in the American chart. And Orcus, that's a trans-Neptunian planet. Actually, it's a Plutino to be exact. A Plutino meaning it shares about the same orbit as Pluto. There's a whole bunch of smaller bodies, celestial bodies, which have been found in that area. Orcus is one of them, and Orcus actually is pretty much a mirror image of Pluto's orbit around the sun. It looks almost like the two wings of a butterfly, and sure enough, Orcus has been found to be related to alchemy, the rebuilding, transmuting. So you see, this is an interesting opposition. So it is in the base chart of the American nation, that transmuting of the dark, and that is very powerfully placed here. Also Ceres, again the earth goddess, is here involved, squaring more or less the ascendant, and Uranus here very strongly, very very exact actually. So whenever Uranus is activated in the American chart, then automatically that Nessus Orcus opposition comes in. Now Orcus has a 244-year orbit around the sun, and guess what? The American nation turns 244 years old just in a couple weeks or so. And Nessus has a 122-year orbit. So maybe some of you already see where I'm going. So since the American nation's inception, Orcus has completed one full orbit, just came back here to its same position in the zodiac as it was in 1776. Nessus in the same time has made two full orbits, has come back here to that exact place, and I just want to show you quickly. I did the math here, I did the research, so let me just go there. So Orcus had returns to its natal place in the American chart between September 2017 to May 2019, and Nessus had returns between April 2018 and January 2020, and that final one Nessus return, that final Nessus return was within hours of the big Saturn-Pluto conjunction of January 10, January 12. On the 10th it was the heliocentric, on the 12th it was the geocentric. So this is particularly meaningful, and what we experience in our present times certainly is, that's one main theme, that transformation, that re-evaluation of all the dark stuff of abuse, pathological behavior, and to transcend it, to transmute it into a higher frequency. And Uranus is kind of the connecting link which helps us to move on and to dissolve and to surpass, bringing it to a higher frequency band, because Nessus, as all celestial bodies, they are multifaceted. This is just this body's very lowest frequency, abuse and pathological behavior. There's other aspects which we still have to develop, which likely are within this character if we bring this frequency to a higher level, and that is what we are working on. So you see, this is really encoded in the American nations chart, that in that time frame between 2017 and 2028, actually, that's how long these two slow moving objects are in a perfect opposition, coming in and out of exactness. I did also the calculation here. This is just want to show you this quickly. So let me just go here. Okay, you see, between April 2017 and up to the year 2028, the program I'm using is only calculating till 2025, but it is making, these two bodies are making oppositions throughout the whole decade coming. So this is a longer process we're involved in to fully transmute these energies. Now let's go back here to the present chart. That's the chart of June 21st, 2020. And that is now the geocentric chart. I just want to highlight a few things which are a little different from the heliocentric one. Uranus again is rising, not that exact. As you remember, in the heliocentric it was dead on the ascendant. Here it's 2 degrees or so off, which is still very exact. So that's still absolutely valid, that newness, sudden, unexpected shock, whatever you call it. Now, what is really interesting in this chart is the third house. Third house is Gemini, is information, flow of information. It is the understanding of the translation of the higher frequencies down to everybody's mental capacities, if you want. Now the North Node is here, Sun is here, the Moon is here naturally, as it's the eclipse. And the cusp of that third house is at 001 Cancer. So we're really entering a whole new level of understanding, of integration. And I just had this insight. We were waiting for all these big events to occur from top down, if you want, arrests, whatever, whatnot. And it seems what really is happening now, that Trump and his team decided to let it all play out, to let the dark forces expose themselves and let the enemy destroy himself, kind of to let these things happen so people will wake up, will understand. And it seems we're really now at that point where this is happening, where there's a grassroots movement of more and more people really seeing through the games and the deceptions and the tricks and all whatnot. So this is really encouraging. And also Mercury is in here. Mercury is retrograde right now, as you know, and will still be retrograde for another couple weeks at least. Now Mercury has been conjuncting the American nation Sun, and which is at 13 degrees 19. So over the course of these 3 weeks or so, Mercury will have 3 exact conjunctions with the American Sun. This is interesting, this is important, this really ties into this revisiting reality, looking with fresh eyes. Again, naturally, Pluto, Jupiter here are right high up at midheaven in the 10th house, the house of government, of public affairs, big changes, big shifts with Pallas, the asteroid of intelligence, of adding it all up, getting a scientific understanding of what's going on. Uranus here still in the 1st degree of Aquarius, going back into Capricorn very soon. I guess it's the 30th of June, revisiting Capricorn for another few months, and then rejoining with Jupiter pretty much exactly at that spot in December, exactly on winter solstice, starting that whole new big cycle, which I was talking about since many years. This would be really the rebirth into a new area, a new dimension, a new historical period. And we're talking of many centuries. It only happens every 8 centuries that Jupiter and Pluto meet in the same 3 signs of the same element. For the past 200 years, Jupiter and Saturn were meeting in Earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. And starting 2020 in December, for the next 200 years, these 2 giant planets, which give I would say that they lay the foundation for the societal developments, the big changes, how we as a society function in air science, communication, and the flow of information, freedom, and particularly the sign Aquarius would strongly hint that we are becoming a starfaring nation, that we are opening up to the interdimensional levels of accepting, receiving all our space brothers and sisters, becoming just one of many nations, planetary unification naturally being a side effect of that, as once we understand we are just one of many families, then this is pretty easily conceivable that we become all united. Let's just now go to the midpoint chart to finish off here. I don't want to go too long here to keep you here on track. So this is the midpoint chart, and here again 1704. This time for Washington. Venus at the 7th house cusp. Another indication that this is really about coming together, finding common ground. Here the Uranus is again in the first house, interestingly enough. The first house always is a key to understand the whole chart, as it's kind of the fractal of the whole. Always in the first house we see the theme, and then all the other planets are showing us how this all will play out. So Uranus here in early Leo again, and then if we look at the three charts together, and let's just do this quickly. I still have here the heliocentric charts. I haven't touched on that yet. So here we have inside the heliocentric chart of this present eclipse of June 20th. In the middle you have the base chart of 1399, and outside we have the harmonic midpoints, the time-space midpoints. So just want to point out a few things, as I have not touched on that yet. What stands out here in terms of interchart aspects is Aries here. The base chart, Aries being the disruptor, the one which creates problems in the first place, but for the sake of finding greater unity, it is that kind of wrench which is thrown into our system to make us go back to evaluate everything and to see why are things difficult and sort it out. So Aries has this big square going on with Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn. See, that's where Aries is right now, heliocentrically, making an exact square here to Pluto. Heliocentrically, that's actually still getting closer to exactness, 2336 here, Pluto 2355, Aries, Pluto is moving faster, which I talked about that before too, is that questioning of everything, I would call it. It's exact between 2020 and 2022. It is calling us out to see, look at everything which doesn't add up, to get us to brighten up, to get smarter, to understand what is really, really at the core, at the center of this reality we live in. It's a big awakener, shaker. So Aries here at Zenith. And then let's look at as we already speak of Aries in the midpoint chart. It is here, just curious how it aspects. Yeah, it's squaring here this ascendant. There's not too much going on, but we have here a limited number of planets in this chart. So anyway, what else is standing out here? I talked about that already. Jupiter, Pluto here at midheaven, Ceres. What also is interesting here is Mercury, heliocentrically, in the base chart is conjunct Earth and conjunct Chiron in the midpoints. Another theme which I had touched on in my earlier podcast, Chiron, Mercury, is the healing, it's the exposing, and then the new understanding which is following suit.